Welcome, Climate Viewers. My name is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News. Today is May 14th, 2017, and I got my homeboy Christopher Fontenot from a Microwave Planet with me today. Buckle your seatbelts. We're talking about HARP. Tell everybody about yourself, Chris.
Well, glad to be back, Jim. Glad you're continuing your work and putting this stuff out. I run a Microwave Planet, and we talk about the science behind electromagnetic perturbation of the atmosphere. We discuss electromagnetic nuclearization of clouds and aerosols and all these things, and connect the pieces of the puzzle. But today, I think we're going to talk about the Schumann resonance, and that's a really interesting subject to me. So we want to certainly clarify some rumors that have been circling around our community and try to help people to see the light.
Certainly. Let's clear up some rumors and let's talk about some resonances. And happy Mother's Day to everybody listening out there. And we're going to talk about Mother Earth today and how she vibrates. So if you don't know what a Schumann resonance is, if you've never heard of an ionospheric heater, if you've heard people talk about HARP but you don't know what to believe, today you're gonna get it. I guarantee you. Like, now I had Chris on. I think you were on my first or second show, and we only did like 30 minutes because I had two obligations crash into each other, and I promised to have Chris back on, and I promised to you guys that are listening, me and Chris are going to do many more of these because I've talked to this, brother from another mother at least 10, 20 hours on the phone. And each time we talk, I go, man, I wish we would have recorded that. Would you agree, Chris?
I'm glad we have an opportunity to discuss in detail. And, we're going to cover some novice information and that way we don't jump out in front of people. But also we're going to cover some advanced notions and ideas about what creates a Schumann resonance and, dispel some myths regarding that as well. So glad to have you.
That's right. That's right. So let's start with some myths right now. So this is HARP. I don't know if you guys have been told that there are many HARPs all over the world, but when we say HARP, when me and Christopher say HARP, we're talking about HARP on HARP Access Road up in Gakona, Alaska. There's only one HARP, and it is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. It is a field of 180 crossed dipole antennas, meaning they look like a helicopter blade, 72 feet tall. And they all operate from 2.8 to 10 megahertz. There's 3.6 million watts going into it with an effective radiated power of 5 gigawatts. For anybody who watched Back to the Future, Doc Brown said 1.21 gigawatts is a lightning bolt. This bad boy, 5 gigawatts. So that's our HARP. That's what we're talking about today. Now, there are many other ionospheric heaters around the world. I'll show them all before the end of this. This is climateviewer.org. This is my 3D map. And under the electromagnetic section, you just click that and expand it out. And we're under ionospheric heaters here. And there's a little tree to expand it out, and you can see the whole list of them and fly around to them. But let's not do that yet. What's the fun in doing all that? Let's save something for a little later. What Chris and I are going to talk about is basically space weather control. And most people aren't even familiar with this term. Chris, you talk about space weather all the time. Will you just weather to somebody who never heard of it before?
Well, I think the simple thing to remember is that everything, all thermal radiation is a product of electromagnetic induced potential. So when you induce that potential, you increase electron volt, and therefore you get a temperature radiation or thermal radiation that creates all the thermal effects that we talk about. So the primary factor, the primary actor is the electric force. And so we want to dispel the myths that, temperature is the causation of all of these things and get right to the source of the electric current in the atmosphere, and therefore the sun being the primary source of most of our electromagnetic radiation coming in.
Right.
understand how that force interacts with our own man-made mechanisms for perturbing that system. So
Okay. So
that's
Chris had a very science me. I love you, brother. I know there's some people scratching. I am just as guilty as Chris of using words that, just are so complicated. Um, what we're talking about here is energy from the sun comes down here to Earth, and that energy gets turned in from electromagnetic wavelengths of light to heat to the ground you live on.
that's right.
So space weather is that tweener spot. It's
That's
the
right.
space between the weather that you live in today, where you breathe the air, and the weather right there at the edge of our space.
And the
And
climate,
that, go ahead.
the climate sciences are right now starting to understand how this mechanism um, interacts, how the solar, perturbation of our atmosphere. In fact, we know that coronal heating is a product of alpha wave emissions around the corona of the sun. So, just as the sun is heated through alpha wave, our Earth is heated through the same electrostatic forces, alpha waves as well. So we get into the source. What causes climate change? Well, it has to be something related to that, because that's what creates the heat to start with.
Right. So that on that note, let's now take a step back, and let's before everybody starts to, get confused by any of this terminology. I want to start back in the redneck days, back when nobody knows this stuff. Let's get to it, dude.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm over here on weathermodificationhistory.com. I'm going to drop that link in chat. Boom, boom. What I did was I came over here, and there's a little clock down here at the bottom. If you click that, or the little filter timeline thing, space weather. All right. And it says present for a reason. As you can see here, this goes back a little further, but let's just break it down for you. So back in 1929, they had this thing right here, and they were talking about using mirrors in space to burn the ground, to heat the poles, to melt the poles. So a mirror in space, the most dreadful weapon. But like any other technical achievement, the space mirror could also be employed for military purposes, and furthermore, it would be a most horrible weapon, far surpassing all previous weapons. And they called it the burning glass. Remember that terminology, burning glass, because this is important for what we're talking about when we get to space mirrors. So all of this is referenced at weathermodificationhistory.com, and under the space weather section, you got nuke the Arctic. They tried to blow up the Arctic by dropping nuclear bombs all over it, and the side effect of that was that they really were trying to destroy the ionosphere. So the military hates the ionosphere because, like my homeboy Robert Stanley in chat knows, the ionosphere is not predictable. And when they're going to reflect waves to bounce them around the world, they want to know exactly where they're going to go. And this is for your over-the-horizon radar, is what they like to call it. Now, if they can't accurately predict where that radar is going to go, they get kind of, aggravated because, with situational awareness and all this, real-time necessity to scan for nukes and cruise missiles and people running drugs. There's 1,000 reasons why they're scanning the sky every second. They want it to be very predictable. So they thought, hey, why don't we put a metal particle space ring to melt the Arctic, and simultaneously we'll create an artificial ionosphere. As crazy as that shit sounds, and there's a reference for it right there, M. Gorodsky and Valentin Cherenkov. A ring of metallic potassium particles into Earth's orbit to melt the poles. So then there was Project Westford, and this is the Westford, this one, Chris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Westford Needles. They put 480 million copper dipole antennas into space to try to create an artificial ionosphere. This is 1961 to 1963. Now, most of these needles are buried in the North Pole and the South Pole, because that's where they rain out. And there's still a ton of, I think there's like still like 500,000 of them floating in space. That's insane, right? Just mind boggling. And most people have no clue about that. I don't know why this is kicking me to the bottom every time I do that. That's very annoying. I have a bug. Project High Water, rocket drops water into space. Whole Earth glows. Interesting. 1962, April to November. What this was is they dropped water right there at the boundary of the ionosphere, and it made something called air glow. Chris, could you explain what air glow is?
Well,
By
anytime.
chance, while I blow my nose.
Well, at that altitude and with those energies that are conducted along those waveguides in the ionosphere, we're talking about plasma, and whether it's glow, in an luminous state or not, dictates whether it's an air glow phenomenon or not. So low density plasma and low energy plasma would be in a dark mode of of existence, and then when you engage and induce more electrical potential into that plasma, then it becomes luminous. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about energy in the plasma and the electron volt potential in that plasma.
Yep. And then here's a good shot of air glow, so you guys know what I'm talking about. I just pulled this up on Google image search right there. You see that glow? It almost looks like a force field. Pretty freaking cool, right? So you can actually see that. Go to Google, type in air glow. There's many different shots of it. But they noticed this for the first time. I think the first sighting of it was the Skylab launch, where they actually knocked out radio communication all over the Pacific due to that launch. What's up, Lee Beasy? That was an interesting one. But regardless, they had enough of them blowing up, the nukes in the sky. They had the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was in 1963. Because basically at this point, the military was trying to destroy Starfish Prime, Operation K. There were several of these things. So in order to stop that, they said, let's ban upper atmospheric nuclear explosions altogether. You can only do them underground. And the exact same time, this happened. And it said, create an artificial ion cloud in the interplanetary space for the studying the state of interplanetary medium, sounding rocket experiments of May 1963. And the picture goes like this: magnetospheric modification. This is exactly the way they do it to this day. This started in 1963. And what they did was they would launch sounding rockets. They would release a cloud of plasma released by a satellite here. So they would put a satellite in orbit. The satellite would dump chemicals like, wait for it, barium, strontium, sulfur hexafluoride, several other metals. After they release clouds of barium, these are called heavy barium ion clouds. Started doing it in 1963. They would heat them from the ground. I swore to Chris that I would not make this section take long, so let me speed this up. So long story short, artificial strontium and barium clouds in the upper atmosphere. This is 64. Solar-powered satellite. More barium clouds, more barium clouds, more barium clouds. Then Skylab, I was wrong. That was 73. Skylab knocks out all the radio over the Atlantic Ocean. And more barium charges in the ionosphere, and you get the picture. So NASA creates clouds in conducting weather experiment, barium cloud over Alaska. This is called Project Cameo. Shout out to Dominic Marama for this one. This is what we're talking about here. We're talking about barium clouds in space heated by ground-based heaters like HARP, like Sura, like the Tromso array. And they've been doing this since the 60s. Most people to this day do not know about any of these instruments. This is the ionospheric heater at Tromso. So Chris, tell them a little bit about ionospheric heaters.
Well, we're talking Einstein's spooky action at a distance, a dipole across a distance of space. In fact, that's exactly what they're doing. They're inducing that electrical potential in the ionosphere with high frequency modulation. And by doing so, it creates an alpha wave emission in the electrojet.
Yep. Continue, sir.
So an alpha wave emission is the cause and creation of all electrostatic charge in the atmosphere. So when we're referring to you about, well, lightning causes alpha waves, or vice versa, alpha waves creates lightning. So we're talking about inducing charge potential into the system. In other words, what's the use of having a sun if we can do that anymore?
Yeah. So what he said that was observed by Vonnegut. You ready?
Well, I mean,
We're talking about Kurt Vonnegut back here in the day.
Yeah, I referred to Tesla. Tesla said, man could tap the breast above the sun and release our energy toward Earth, magnetic as well as light, end quote. And by saying that, what he's saying is there's a mechanism in place already by which the Earth and the sun interface. And if man can tap into that sympathetic resonance between those two bodies, he can create perturbations on the sun itself instantaneously, and irregardless of the power density. It's not about how much power. It's simply about creating that resonance, and that is Einstein's spooky action at distance, explained in terms of Maxwellian's equations and electrodynamics. Interesting topic.
Oh, and we're talking about punching the sun and making it do things.
Absolutely.
Too cool, right?
Well, and
that's right. And what he's referring to with the storm sprites, blue jets, and elves. These are transluminous events, TLEs, as in the science community. But these are basically upward lightning, not lightning going from the cloud to the ground, but lightning going from the top of the cloud out to space. Correct?
That's right. And now we're trying to figure out what causes those perturbations, that causes that discharge to occur between those layers, of the ionosphere, and therefore the next bubble inside of a bubble, which would be the next, the magnetic boundary in space. That would be not a line of demarcation, but certainly a line of potential between those two fields. So that's what I feel is occurring, and a lot of people in the electric universe concur that that's probably what's causing those sprites and relatively new phenomena witnessed in the 80s.
That's right. I was trying to pull up a picture fast enough, but apparently it doesn't want to give it to me. But yeah, upward lightning is what it's sometimes called, and there's a lot of argument over some of these fancier things. Stanford VLF group actually studies this, and they use a HARP facility to study it. One of their goals was to try to recreate an ELF wave using a lightning bolt, like actually be able to tune a lightning off a specific radio wave. That's insane. I don't know how far they got with it, but that was their goal initially, was to that lightning bolts give off VLF and ELF waves. These ELF and VLF waves can be heard from a great distance. So part of what these ionospheric heaters are doing is they're boiling a portion of the sky and turning it into a virtual antenna. And by creating a virtual antenna in the sky, they can create these low frequency waves that can be heard on the other side of the planet, underwater at the bottom of the ocean, where the submarines are that have the nuclear bombs. that are going to kick the shit out of the North Koreans if they get out of line.
And that is that is conventional, mainstream ideas. What I suggest may be a little bit more sinister. If they create
Go with it,
this
dude.
and it serves multiple purposes, right, through low frequency communications with submarines and such, then it does that. But if it also through the process perturbs the ionosphere, it either induces electrical potential in our system and therefore increases our magnetic field, or like you were suggesting earlier, they're using it to blow out radiation, therefore decreasing our magnetic field, then the real game is control of our electromagnetic spectrum. That's the big picture.
And that's what Robert and the Ham guys, they keep saying that there's some really whack stuff going on where they have dead spaces in the bandwidth.
Yes.
And that's crazy. But what most people don't understand is, technically speaking, most of the bandwidth is bought and paid for already, and it's so finely tuned now that I believe that FCC's even like auctioning off portions. Like you have to like bid for portions of that frequency now.
You know who owns the majority of the bandwidth right now? I did research on it. Is oil companies, because they're doing remote sensing to find these reserves with satellite.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So they also, so what he's talking about is they also use, it's called tomography.
Yes.
And they use these ELF, VLF waves for, sensing underground stuff.
And they're all
pretty cool.
Frequency because we're talking about neutrinos of those frequency ranges, and we know that you can see clean through the earth if you're, imaging neutrinos. There's a facility in Japan that did a study and took images of the sun through the earth when the dark side.
How about that one, buddy?
Yeah, nice.
I don't play around, people. So
they know all mineral rights.
Tomography, they can imaging underground structures. This is what oil spelunkers do. They go out and they use VLF and ELF waves. They reflect it off of the reserves underground. Same thing that a bat does in your backyard while eating mosquitoes.
Here's the next evolution in thought with that, Jim. If they modulate it, the specific resonant harmonic of the mineral they're searching for, then they'll get an attenuation from that mineral in place underground, no matter how deep it is.
Yeah, and then what it says right here is non-invasive imaging of underground structure is important for the detection of hidden tunnels and other hazards, as well as resource exploration, mineral exploration, and environmental contamination problems.
You wonder why?
Basically,
you wonder why they knew all that lithium was in Afghanistan?
It's true. So what they have is they have something called HALO, and it's the HARP LOFAR. God, what's the word? Oh my God, I just drew a blank. When you have three instruments around the world and you got to triangulate them. Interferometer. That's what I'm talking about. Interferometer. So LOFAR works as an interferometer. It has low frequency array listening stations all across Europe. I've actually got it mapped on here. Derp. So let's just bring that back.
Good work, Jim.
Yeah, I know it's on here. All right, so where's my LOFAR stuff? Is it in here? This is Loran's, Gwen's, Awesome's, and I think I actually have it here. There we go. That's the LOFAR stuff right there. Low frequency away, LOFAR website. Boom. All right, so I hid LOFAR under other radars, observatories, telescope arrays, and satellite communications. And you can actually come down here and see, like, this is the main base station right here at the base of it. And check this bad. Look at that thing. That's some cool Star Trek looking shit, right?
Yeah, it is.
So HART works with LOFAR, and they call the two HALO. And what you basically have is this thing comes out this cool ass spiral. Where's the website? Tell me they still got the picture. Ah, they don't have the picture. That's so wrong. This is dangerous. Me trying to load stuff while I'm on the thing because sometimes it don't work out so good for Jimbo. Um, but yeah, go over there, check out the links. Anyway, LOFAR is basically listening for these low frequency signals that are created by the ionospheric heaters. Yeah, check that shit out, Robert. Um, you come out here and you keep zooming out, and what you get is basically here's the array. It's the blue ones, okay, and it's the size of Europe, pretty much. Comes all the way out to here. I believe that's 1, 2. No, that's Uran. What am I talking about? There it is. Anyway, so they go all the way around here, and what they can do is on the other side of the planet, where HARP is, see the green dot? They can shoot through the ground and catch it on the other side of the planet, which is kind of crazy, but that's exactly what they're doing. So when they fire signals from here down at Jicamarca, Peru, and catch it over here at LOFAR, how about let's catch some stuff under Iran? How about let's go look under China? Why not? That's how they work that junk. Anyway, I've gotten far astray. Where were HARP LOFAR?
It's a worldwide system of control, and all these mechanisms have been in place and been built for years and years now. So
that's right.
Where they're going with it, in my opinion, planetary surface power system. Wireless transfer of energy. All the communications companies some years back applied for licenses to be able to do that, to be able to be a utility company, to provide electrical power at a distance. That's Tesla. So we're moving that direction, but they have to be able to control the phase sequence of all this electrical power on the planet to be able to control that global atmospheric electrical grid circuit, and that's what they're calling it in the research that I've looked at. So
that's right. That's right. And there's a lot of arguments about the chicken before the egg on ionospheric heating and earthquakes. Why don't you tell them about that one? How they noticed over Fukushima that the ionosphere above it heated, so then they said, well, there's some kind of relational thing there. So now they're saying that they can predict earthquakes based on the ionosphere above it heating, when we know damn well that, the ionosphere can be heated. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what I find ironic is like when we've got, all of these facilities around the world, that are heating the ionosphere, like the Arecibo array, like HARP, couldn't they create the earthquakes, bro?
An earthquake is a product of electrical discharge potential between layers in the earth and layers in the ionosphere. And when that interface happens, then typically that's where an earthquake will occur, near that spot of discharge. We know that occurs in the ELF harmonic. We know that HARP can induce ELF harmonics through alpha and wave emissions in the ionosphere. So it stands to reason, not only reason, but I've seen studies where they've actually indicated disturbances in the ionosphere caused by, and they identified the ionospheric heater that induced that potential over the Samoan Islands some time back that created that earthquake. Now, I read the study. It's not a matter of conjecture. It's peer-reviewed and cited paper. So they're doing it. And how they're doing it is not so much a mystery anymore. There are people out there putting apps out that predict earthquakes and things like that. My only question to those people is this: did you require national security clearance in order to release it? And if you did, what are your connections?
What are your connections? Yeah, man, I don't get it, dude. I don't get it. But what I do understand is like you said, that we know that they can be heated. You say, I want to see that paper you're talking about with the connection, because I've known this since Fukushima. You know what I mean? Like I was like, okay.
Everyone was saying for years that HARP didn't have enough power to induce that. It doesn't have to. it's about sympathetic resonance between those layers, those electrical currents in the earth and the atmosphere, and those electrical potentials are largely induced by the sun. So all it has to do is make an interface, create a pathway for discharge of that energy.
Yeah, and what they don't realize is like this figure here. What we're talking about is creating standing waves and compressive magnetohydrodynamic waves. These are like emic waves. These are the lowest frequencies imaginable, like the 0.0001 hertz to 1 hertz at the most. So when we're talking about frequencies this low, anybody's ever vibrated their freaking trunk with a subwoofer knows what happens with low frequencies. That's how they actually find the oil stuff underground, is they use these deep frequencies.
That's right.
Now, and the emic waves, the standing waves that are the compressive emic waves that they're creating, they're something else. Now, let's dip into some slides. Why don't we?
Jump on it, Jim.
Let's harp on it, bro. I did this for an article. It's called "How HARP Really Works." I put this out back in 2014. I just realized to myself, I was like, it's been 3 damn years since I talked about HARP. I mean, really? Like, I talked about it for like 6 months straight. And I was like, let's just leave it alone for a while. And it's been a while, so let's break out some HARP knowledge. I got a video of this up on YouTube. It's got like 70,000 views.
Well, the more we know,
and people are starting to get it.
The more we know, the better we do, Jim.
Oh, did you get cut off?
No,
that's the way I figured. And what I did was I cited it here, a guy named Dennis Papadopoulos. Now, if you've ever heard about HARP and you never heard of Dennis Papadopoulos, then you're going to hear about it today and you're going to know what we're talking about. So this is called the Virtual ULF ELF Classes in Session. This is what we're talking about with creating ELF waves and VLF waves in space using space weather control. This is important, and when you see resolving critical radiation belt and geospace issues. The term for today is radiation belt remediation. So, Chris, can you describe the Carrington event to everybody?
Yeah. Back in 1800s, I forget the exact date, there was a solar event that knocked out all the telegraph wires and communications that were, in the early days of telecommunications or communications and electricity. And, it was a devastating event, and they estimate had it occurred in modern times that it would wipe out all of our technology. So satellites, communications, telecom, everything. So quite a devastating event, and we're curious as to how that occurred, and they've studied it for years.
Yeah, we're scared shitless it would happen today. So in today's world, if we were to have a Carrington event, imagine what you saw in the TV show Revolution, that would happen today. By now, some of you may have noticed that my nose is completely welded itself shut. We're just going to press on. I've had a nose and throat week. I even saw Newt Gingrich, Mitch McConnell, and like 15 other people on TV, like just coughing their brains out, and everybody I know is sick. So if anybody got the chemtrail, thunderstorm, asthma, flu this week, I feel your pain. Back to the story.
direct connections I found, Jim, between symptoms of flu and ELF harmonics. So asthma as well, highly connected, correlated to ELF harmonics in the atmosphere.
Very interesting.
Positive ionization in the atmosphere. We know about free radicals in the body and how they affect our creative health, and all of that is a product of what we're going through right now and these changes.
I fully agree with you on that. And we're going to have to do a whole nother show on like EMF, Wi-Fi, cell phones, how it affects your brain, your body, your DNA.
Well, then, in that case, I highly recommend Dr. Jack Cruz, a practicing neurosurgeon that
We have to
discusses.
bring him on, but I agree with you on that. So we'll have to bring him on for that one.
He is a genius.
I fully agree with you. So let's get this one knocked out real quick. What we're gonna do is do a little class. Everybody, we know what space, how you create a ELF or VLF wave using HARP, straight from the master himself. The master not being me, being Dennis Papadopoulos. So this is obviously a presentation that Dennis Papadopoulos gave. Now, of course, if he gave this presentation, it'd be a lot dirtier than what I'm about to tell you, so I'm going to give you the simple version. Virtual antenna, current modulation PEJ. This is polar electrojet heating. The electrojet is a circle of electricity that is around both of our poles. Okay? And so we're talking right about where the HARP facility is. So one's around the North Pole, there's another electrojet around the South Pole, and I believe I actually have an overlay. Regardless, what they're doing is they're
also counter-rotating around the equatorial plane.
That's right. That's right.
Where Sirius and
I don't think that's actually. Yeah, and they're basically like rubbing against each other right along the equator is what he's talking about.
Right on.
And this is basically the electrical, circuit of the planet. That most people, never get to see this kind of stuff. I should have had let me see if I can get an electrojet photo up there. I think I have one in the article. I'm sure I do, because I actually explained all this stuff. This is not the article. This is the article. And it is there. I just saw it. There's the electrojet. Gotta love tons of references. So this is the electrojet. Boom. That's the auroral electrojet. And what you notice is HARP is right there underneath it. Over here, Tromso, right underneath it. That's not a coincidence. So what they were doing is they were using the electricity in this electrojet as like a capacitor, like a line stiffener, like an amplifier. What they're doing is they're actually tuning this sucker to radiate electricity at the frequency that they want. So what they do is, here's your electrojet, here's the ground, injection coming up through it, requires a current, radiation belt injection, and you get a waveguide injection that sends out frequencies ranging from 70 hertz on down. Okay? So I appreciate that, Robert Stanley. Love you, man. Ice County Scattermaster on Facebook. Shout out right back at you. So what you got is, this is the old school way. This is the way they've been doing it since about 1994, when they first put up the first version of HARP. And then they figured out. Go ahead.
Yeah. I say that's a description of what you're in regard to that waveguide. That waveguide and its distance from the core of the Earth dictates, because those alpha waves are traveling at near the speed of light, which are alpha wave speeds, that creates human resonances. So while we're on that topic, that's exactly what you're talking about. That waveguide, once it's perturbed, induces amplitude into that Schumann resonance. And of course, through our measurements, we see that Schumann resonance occurs in an octave. So 8 different frequencies and different amplitudes of each one of those frequencies.
That's right. That's right. So what we're talking about right here is bouncing these waves. They actually, when they fire them out through the electrojet, they get shot out into space, and then they go all the way down here to the South Pole. Some of them rain out. You see the little tick-tack down here? So some of that energy is lost there. But some of it turns right around and goes right in the magnetic field line all the way back to the North Pole. Each time it does that, it's called a hop. As it makes hops, it's scraping electrons and then it's dumping them on the poles. That's called artificial aurora. So whenever they're creating artificial aurora, they are also burning up ozone, which is a bad thing. And this slide right here comes from satellite threat due to high altitude nuclear detonations by Dennis Papadopoulos, University of Maryland. This was called the Tether Panel Study. And basically he said, I can save us from a nuclear blast in space that would put out all our power, or a Carrington event, by using the HARP facility as a wind tunnel to see if we could create a mitigation system. That is called radiation belt remediation. So Mr. Papadopoulos is trying to save us, apparently, from Carrington events and Korean nuclear explosions over the U.S. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying that, and they're always, riding on the back of a moral issue. They're going to save us from what they've already created.
Right. So this is one of those, problem, reaction, solution scenarios, of course, but I mean, totally. So what you have is a situation where Dennis Papadopoulos says, I could save you from a solar flare or a crazy dictator with an EMP. And at the same time, you have things like extremely low frequency ELF waves can subliminally influence brain activity to align itself to delta, theta, alpha, and beta wave patterns, inclining an audience toward everything from alertness to passivity. Infrasound can also be used tactically. As ELF waves endure for great distances, it could be used in conjunction with medium broadcasts for freaking mind control. What do you think about that?
I think this is that they've been studying this phenomenon for a long time, and how the brain interfaces with that harmonic in the Schumann resonance. They know the brain and the heart are oscillating at the same resonance as the primary amplitude of the Schumann cavity. So if they do increase that amplitude in some fashion, whether they in fact increase the frequency oscillation, it would have an effect. Whether it would increase the strength of the heartbeat or in fact collapse the heartbeat if it was out of phase sequence, that's a question.
Yeah, so with this Schumann resonance, what if I told you that HARP could remove it? On the left-hand side, spectrum before HARP ULF start experiment, ambient noise. Robert Stanley, I can't wait to see the look on your face when you see this shit. On the right-hand side, after HARP has been turned on, Schumann resonance disappeared, 60 hertz tone, like the one in your wall, very loud, increase in noise by 10 to 20 decibels between 0.7 and 10 hertz.
Changing landscape.
That's insane, right?
Tesla wrote about this, Jim. He wrote an article called, called the problem of increasing human energy, and he discussed what the impact on life would be if it were to occur. And here we are.
So this brings us to the Schumann resonance discussion. Why don't we just get to it right now, since we got this up on the screen? Now, a lot of people are saying the Schumann resonance is increasing. What say you, Chris?
Well, I think it's important to understand what creates a Schumann resonance. You're going to get a lot of information on mainstream that says that lightning creates the Schumann resonance. And in fact, my studies indicate that the alpha wave emission in the electrojet is what the primary cause of the Schumann resonances are. So each waveguide in the Schumann cavity creates its own resonant harmonic, and each waveguide therefore can be amplified, as you indicated. It increased at the 60 hertz and reduced at other frequency oscillation. So by increasing the amplitude, it can have an effect. If we change the highest amplitude in the Schumann cavity, then our body should try to attenuate with that harmonic because it's the most powerful in the system. And therefore, I think that the Schumann, because the waveguides are fixed and the alpha wave emissions along those waveguides are fairly constant, then I suggest that the Schumann resonance is probably not changing. And if I had verifiable data to disprove that, then I would go with that information. But as of right now, I don't think there's any verifiable data online that's not censored.
Oh, I think you nailed it, dude. And I've got the proof up on the screen. So what he's talking about, the waveguides, is what they also call shells. And basically, depending on where your ionospheric heater is in the world, physically located, will determine where it's going to land on the other side of the planet. So you can see that if you're near the equator, clearly you're not going to be able to reach the poles. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Each one of these shells fires back, and it hits here, then it comes back. Let me zoom in on that thing. I'm actually pointing at the wrong screen. So you see, here's HARP up in the 4.9. It would go the long trip right here, all the way down here. Well, here's 4, whatever. And then Sura 2.5, it's only shooting down here in this little area. So the further you are ISCAT, that's Tromso, it's up even higher, 5.8, longer distance travel. So today they're upping the power of the ISCAT 3D, which is in Tromso, to 100 gigawatt, which is insane.
And the only thing the mainstream is missing from that image is that on the north and south pole, there is Birkeland filament connections between us and the sun. And so there is actual, ionization potential out 8.5 Earth radii out from the North Pole. So that's measured through D1, D2, and tide missions. So we know that interface is down that Birkeland current filament between us and the sun exists. And so that image is not misleading so much as it's not complete. If you put a funnel on the north and south pole and connected an electrical wire, that would be it.
I agree with you. So what he's talking about is these what they call flux transfer events, or the currents that they're ropes that connect the poles of our planet to the poles of the sun.
And NASA's going to call it magnetic reconnection in order to maintain the relativity myth. So,
Of course, because they don't want to mess up dogma or anything. That would be weird.
The biggest thing they won't want to acknowledge is the electrical interfaces that occur in space through the etheric force, and that likely is the reason why they won't talk about those issues.
Yeah, and I agree with that thing for certain.
Yeah.
But here's a picture of a guess of what one of these filaments would look like. Right there. That's like an artist rendition of it. But, in order for them to actually ever see this, they would have to dump a ton of chemicals in it and light it up with a radar anyway, and expect them to do that in the near future.
I think they're mapping it currently, Jim,
with the resonance thing.
Yeah, through millimeter antenna arrays, over kilometers, and pick it up in terahertz frequencies. So it's possible that that's what's going on, but that's not something they're going to talk about either.
Yeah, I seriously doubt it. But this is, last time we had a discussion, we talked about these flux transfer events. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but regardless, this was mentioned in 2008, and it is rarely ever talked about. Absolutely. Just so rarely talked about. But this is a semi-religious thing, if you ask me. We won't get into that today, but let's just say there's a lot of energy returning to heaven.
That's right.
So, Chris, what do you want to add to this thing about the HARP stuff? Am I too far afield? We've only covered one way to make the ELF stuff, and why they don't need HARP anymore.
Well, they don't really
I
need
think
it.
that's pretty important.
They have satellite technology now. They have the Tether satellite mission, which created an alpha wave emission in the ionosphere as well. So they have satellite technology now that can do the same thing, ground based and sea based, generally in the X band frequencies. And, you know, being able to create that through a dipole antenna on board satellite doesn't seem like um, a far stretch either. So, that's the future. I think that's where they're moving toward, is creating a system of wireless communications and power transfer worldwide, um, and it won't be free.
Yeah, and I have a Tesla book by Margaret Cheney, and there's a quote in there that says that basically they were trying to create a quote electric pipeline in the sky to shoot the natural gas from Alaska down to the states when they created HARP. So ARCO was originally talking about converting natural gas straight to electricity, then pumping it through the sky to New Mexico or Washington. No pipes, pipeline in the sky. I think that's fascinating.
Well, if you leave out one step, it seems almost impossible. But if you include this one step in there, okay, so I use HARP to induce electrical potential in the ionosphere, and then that power increases the power density across the board and throughout the whole system. So they're inducing electrical potential in the system, and not only can you use that power for utilities, for housing and things like that, but you can control weather, induce earthquakes, storms, and in fact, what we're discussing to the extent of that is they can induce potential in the sun to create electrical interface between the Earth and the sun. So that's where we're going. That's the future, and we're talking about it right now, right here on ClimateViewer.
That's right. That's right. And a microwave planet. Don't get it twisted. So what happened was we flash forward to back. Let's go back to our little slide thing we got going here. Where the hell is it? There it is. We talked about the electrojet, why they needed these two heaters up near the North Pole, and then finally they figured out, hey, and what they did was they switched from what was called polar electrojet heating, PEJ heating, to ionospheric current drive, ICD. And basically, where before they were just shooting energy into the electrojet and they were stealing from it and making it, tuning it, and causing those sky trumpets everybody hears worldwide, they changed to where they were heating the F region of the ionosphere. So this is 300 kilometers away. All right. So altitude of 300 kilometers. They heat it. I'm going to zoom in on this one little picture right here so we're all on the same page. All right. There we go. So you shoot a signal 300 kilometers in the air. Then that gets heated and it creates what we said earlier, a magnetosonic wave. It's a very, very low frequency wave. It travels down through back towards the ground. And it down here in the E region, 100 kilometers, it creates a Hall current. So this is a secondary antenna. This is basically before they were creating an artificial antenna in the sky using the electric jet. Now they're creating two. So the first one makes a very low frequency wave that makes an Alvin wave out of the second one, which shoots an electromagnetic missile around the planet. Thoughts?
Beautiful, Jim.
Did I nail it?
That's exactly how it works. In fact, the only thing I could add is that, with the technology of laser-induced plasma channeling, now from any position on the planet, they can induce that potential to ground.
Yeah. So this, of course, gave them a lot of wood because they were like, check this shit out. Magnetosonic 0.1 hertz. What? So that's pretty freaking low frequency there. And then, of course, over here, SAW waves is a sheer Alvin wave. Demeter is a satellite. Demeter detected HARP at 2.5 hertz. You can see it right there off the effing chart. Let's go over there. Take a look, see at that slide. See that? Off the damn chart. I mean, don't get me wrong, chart amplitude is pretty freaking weak, but still, they're bragging. So for people who are trying to achieve these low frequencies, yeah, that's the one same sound that your SDR picks up. That's the 2.5 hertz tone is the one that everybody's been saying around the world. It's even on Trine VLF. It's another ham operator site where they say the 2.5 hertz tone has never been attributed to any one facility. We don't know who's making it. You certainly do now. Harp's making that motherfucking tone. Anyway, and there it is again, second place, B Field of Gakota, 2.5 hertz. They be bragging. So that's really what changed. And everybody's like, well, why did they sell Harp? Why the hell would they sell Harp? Well, as they decided, now they don't need it anymore. Once they can create these artificial emissions using this ICD technology, then let's skip the nerd stuff in the middle because it's really bore you guys. That's where I got the Schumann resonance slide, same presentation. This is from 2013. And I'm going to scroll on down here. And I think that they've got the boat slide at the bottom. Do they have it at the bottom? Come on. Cross your fingers, people. Is there a boat down here? They ain't no damn boat. Magnetosonic sonic wave injection at 0.1 hertz. Harp on a boat. Let's just go over here. So, the reason why they sold Harp, they being the military, they sold Harp to the universe is because they decided to put it on a boat. Period, point blank. Can't argue with it. Got the proof to show you right here. Let me scroll on down. Way past all this. All right, there we go. And of course, we just talked about the Electra. Oh, why would you do that? That is just so dirty. You see that shit they did to me?
Yeah.
That was just dirty as hell, was it not? So there you go. Elf produced by Hart with no electrojet, a major breakthrough. Can't make this shit up, people. Based on discoveries in recent HARP campaigns under the Murray ONR, that's Office of Naval Research, Murray is a multiple, just go look it up. Murray ONR and the Brioche DARPA, basic research on the ionospheric, blah, 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 Brioche, it's DARPA. You get it. So HARP, military, DARPA, figured out how to make ELF waves, no electrojet. They don't need a freaking Alaska-based, snowy, cold-ass place. Who the hell wants to go up there anyway? We can put it on a boat. And as you can see right here,
they can put it anywhere now. Technology.
Yeah, they say an efficient ionospheric ELF source that can be positioned in theater on a mobile platform. Absolutely. And you see, mobile high-frequency transmitter boat, making radio frequency that creates ELF generation that uses a waveguide, magnetosonic ELF down to the damn submarine to signal the apocalypse. That's crazy shit, man. So this should pretty much end the debate among all the geniuses that talk about HARP on the internet. The reason why they sold it is because they don't need the motherfucker. Because they're going to put it on a boat. And what does the boat look like? I got a photo. It's called the Strawman Array. They did it to me twice. That is so damn dirty. Why would they do that to me twice?
Jacket.
Damn you, WordPress. I'm going to take my shit off of WordPress. That shit happens to me one more time while I'm live. Barge or shipboard option. The Strawman High Frequency Array. You got to be fucking kidding me. They called it a straw man.
Well, in some cases it is, Jim, because the technology is now satellite-based as well, in my opinion. I haven't found conclusive evidence. I know that they did it with a tether experiment. That's proven. If they can do it with a tether experiment, then they can do it with a dipole antenna. There's no doubt in my mind. Similar technology.
Well, I know that they have space-based satellites that create ELF waves, and I'm pretty sure it's the resonance of I know that the resident satellites could do it. There's another one. They're like CubeSats or something like that. I'll do some research on it
Right. Yeah.
because I'm kind of out. You know, it's been a while since it's been almost 3 years since I talked about this shit, and I haven't looked into it because I've been arguing with people in the chemtrail world. So maybe I should
That's a vicious
brush up
circle.
on that. Let's not bring them up again.
But the next step of technology, really, though, just talking casually about it, is this interface between Earth and the Sun. And think about this as well. They reported, NASA did some years back, that there was climate change taking place on other planets. And we were noticing a lot of, coronal mass ejections occurring away from the Earth, right?
Yep.
And so then we noticed some coming to us. We noticed some going away from us. What did Tesla say? He said, man could tap the breast of Mother Sun and release her energy toward Earth as needed.
That's true. And that goes right back to the whole, solar powered satellite is one of the options that they're talking about, where they go out and they capture the energy, then beam it down to the planet. And of course, if anybody's seen my science project, that doesn't work out so well.
It's interesting. Here's an interesting tidbit. Did you realize that the Earth glows brighter than the sun in microwave frequency?
That's crazy. And I bet you we had something to do with that.
It's a microwave planet.
That's right. It sure as hell is, brother, man. Yeah. So here's the last slide on the boat thing. Optimal area for putting a HARP boat. Right there. Optimal region for Alpha Ray. Right there by New Zealand. Over here by North Korea. Next to China. Let's piss everybody off. There you go. So that's kind of interesting. They're talking about an 800 kilowatt system. That would be a HARP on a boat near North Korea. Wonder if that's pissing anybody off over there right now. This is dated 2013 on this file.
So sports over with.
Yeah, I mean, they've already made several of these boats, but I'm sure I need to go look it up. I'll go check out the FBO.gov and find out where their receipt is. And then when I find out who they gave money to build the damn boat, then I'll update everybody and we'll have a whole new bunch of stuff, new can of worms to chew on. And we'll talk about where the mobile elf boats are at, bro, man. And I heard something about solar radar.
Yeah.
What the crap is a solar radar, man?
Yeah, I sometimes I look at some of this technology and their terminology they use, and I don't know if it's trying to throw us off track or what, but I investigate it thoroughly before I go into detail about it for sure, because there may be something connected. They're just not telling us how.
Well, these things are creepy as hell. That's all I know. That's a photo of the Super Darn down in Jicamarca, Peru, next to the Salzi, which is an ionosign. And if you guys don't know Resonated.com, that used to be me before I was Jim Lee, and I told everybody who I actually was. I was just Resonated on Resonated.net, Resonated.com, and all my maps were on the radiation database. But just look at that photo, man. That's some Star Trek shit. And they want to shoot this stuff at space, control the space weather, create artificial aurora, create air glow, create elf waves, talk to submarines underground. Unbelievable, bro.
It's all about what Lana Friedman talks about in regard to control of the electromagnetic spectrum, full spectrum dominance. And, I've talked with her, and I think she's on track on a lot of things. So, hell, we ain't all getting it right, but we're working toward it.
That's right, bro. And I've heard it best say, the day we all agree is the day we could all be wrong.
I don't want no consensus in the group. That's for damn sure.
That's right. So I'm going to leave with this shot for Chris. This shot is devoted to you, Chris. I got the total electron count up and all the cell phone towers in America. If you don't believe we're a microwave planet, this shot is for you. It looks like a effing porcupine.
It's beautiful.
I mean, I can't even see the damn ground yet. All right, there's some ground.
And for those that don't know, Jim's
Right,
work
man.
genius at mapping, genius programming as well. So
Insane amount of cell phone towers. So this is just cell phone towers. This is from the FCC database from 2011. I next to it, you can see where I got it. Actually, I updated it in 2012. So I converted this to a GeoJSON file, stick it on a map. You can actually go down to the ground and look at these bad boys and see there is a cell phone tower there. I'm not bullshitting you. Please don't let me down. Come on, you got to load up. Load the damn picture. Of course, I got slow ass internet right now. Let's go find one real quick. There you go. Cell phone tower. It's that accurate. Sitting right there next to it. Click on the cell phone tower. It'll tell you Global Communications owns that thing. Had a blackout or something. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait. I'm hitting the total electron content, failing like a mofo. But regardless, that's just the cell phone towers. And you add those things up, 5,000 to 15,000 watts a piece. We are truly a microwave planet.
and the stage has been well set, Jim. They
Any
argue.
last thoughts you want to add to this thing?
They argue for years. Yeah, they argued for years.
Yeah.
We're going to go into an ice age. Then they said we were going to warm up, and now they're saying it's ice age again. Well, hell, if they got the finger on the thermostat, of course it's going to go whichever way they swing it. You know.
Ain't that the truth? But yeah, man, this is one of the things I started out doing was just saying to myself, put it up every single microwave tower on the planet. How many watts would you get? And would it even? Would I know it? You know, the story compared to the amount of energy that the sun puts out, but locally, heat, water, and all that modify affected brains for sure, affect the health for sure. What do we know? I mean, we don't know what all of these microwaves do, but where you see bunches together, I mean, like right in there, there's a big black bunch. That's a city. Look at that shit, man. But we're talking about a power density enough to cook your little brain. I don't think that any of this stuff has really ever been proven to be safe, and we've expanded our microwave footprint so quickly on this planet. And there's 5G coming. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, and then there's the lawsuits over Google's Wi-Fi from space.
Yeah. Well, let's say
The
this.
story goes, the human residents, the heartbeat of our planet.
Let's not forget the primary mechanism.
Hey, Chris.
I want to say is let's not forget the primary mechanism for Einstein's spooky action at a distance is that sympathetic resonance that occurs at those very low harmonics. And in saying that, then we have to acknowledge that different octaves of frequencies above those Schumann resonances can be attenuated through these high technologies and higher resonant frequencies through that same sympathetic resonance. So it's not really about power density anymore. And that's where the new science and research is showing. And that's why I suggest Dr. Jack Cruz would be a great guest for you, because he is very familiar with that subject.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on, man. We'll have to do it. And you know, we don't have all the info on this stuff. That's why I'm trying to just do some of the groundwork, try to look at what all the big ones, multiple million watt facilities like the space fence, talks about. People don't know about this stuff. They still don't know the size and scope of it. So maybe if we look at how microwave the planet is, we could take a step back and say, maybe we should microwave it so much more before we figure out what stuff is. So
okay. I'm going to blow your mind one time.
Go ahead, do it, Bo.
One time, the space fence. If a dipole antenna can induce electrical potential at a distance, then wouldn't a space fence be able to induce that electrical potential in satellites orbiting around that circuit? And if it can, then therefore it can create energy in that satellite and raise its trajectory and speed or lower it. So
I
That's
would tend to agree with you. In fact, there's something called the Christophelos effect. And
oh,
they noticed, yeah, you know where I'm going with this. The
yeah.
Christophelos effect, they noticed it during some upper atmospheric nuclear explosions back at Starfish Prime. And what they realized is the trap radiation that was bouncing from pole to pole, like what they do with HARP today, could also destroy satellites. That the MEV electrons passing through the satellites would fry their circuit boards and cause them to fall out of space. So let's make a little bit of doom for the end of the show. What if HARP was turning the planet into a bug zapper, wherein they create air glow to an extreme extent, so much so that any satellite or ICBM passing through that air glow would be fried and fall out of the sky? You would have Star Wars defense system, a shield, a planetary missile shield, a planetary bug zapper missile shield made of air glow and artificial space weather modification.
Hell, you could induce potential with that same system into comets and meteors and asteroids and all these other
Yep.
things that might come
Who,
into
who
close.
knows what the possibilities are, man?
Yeah, that's the next step.
But regardless, without full and open disclosure of these experiments, without international discussions, and the military implications are insane. I don't approve of any of these processes because basically they are weaponizing Earth itself. They are weaponizing the geophysical system. Therefore, this is called a geophysical weapon. And we all know what Secretary of Defense William Cohen said about that. Others are engaging even in an eco type of terrorism, whereby they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves.
And think about
The
this:
second, go ahead, dude.
Tesla, when he pulled up, when he cranked off his unit down there in Colorado, it blew out the transformers and blew out the generators at the power station there, Colorado Springs. If these circuits are conflicting and the old antiquated system cannot operate in the same time as this new system, then there can be only one. And, God help us when the lights go out.
Yeah, ain't that the truth, man? So, well, dude, I think we're gonna wrap this one up for today, and we're gonna have to do this again because you're my favorite peoples, and we're just gonna leave old Mr. Cohen's face up there. I had heard this quote for 2 years, and it just occurred to me to put a face with it. So I stuck this quote up there, and the first version of it I put up there. It said "weather warfare." So if you've seen the first version of the meme, I changed it. I put geophysical warfare on there because it's a little more accurate to the jargon the military uses. But regardless, all these things, no matter how well they sell them, we could save, as Mr. Papadopoulos said, we could save you from a solar flare or an EMP from a crazy dictator. At the same time, that same technology will always be used as a weapon if it can be. So I think that's my nugget of truth for the evening. Chris, any shout outs you want to give? Anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, kudos to you, brother. You're doing a great job.
And I like the way you talk, brother man.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I swear one day me and you gonna meet, we gonna hug a tree together.
Hell yeah. I got a boat. Well, I got a big one right around the corner. We'll go hug it.
That's right. Build a nice house up at the top of it, and then holler at everybody on the internet how crazy they are. So, anyway, with that being said, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. Check Chris out at amicrowaveplanet.com and a Microwave Planet on Facebook. Of course, I'm Jim Lee, ClimateViewer.com, ClimateViewer.org, and WeatherModificationHistory.com. I will be here every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, and hope to see you next time. And Chris will definitely be back because he's one of my favorite peoples. And love you meeting, guys.
Always a pleasure.